This It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And a pleasant good evening to you and yours, and welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on this 26th day of June, 2018. The trio, as always, Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes, and producer Brian Leonard. We thank you so much for joining us here on this Tuesday evening. Feel free to join us, why don't you? 800-956-7266. This is where the money is made, because Canvas is wide open today. Want to talk about South Carolina's football chances in 2018, feel free. If you think Clemson is not going to take over the reins, or at least relinquish the reins of supremacy inside the Palmetto State, feel free to voice that opinion if you want. You have some thoughts about the final scholarship for South Carolina and Clemson, all on the table today. We could have some answers for both of those things, either by the end of today or at least by the end of this week. State newspaper coming out late last night after the show saying that the momentum again with David Scarr possibly returning to Clemson. They are adding to the reporting of Tiger Illustrated's Larry Williams and the folks at Clemson Insider, who are all basically saying that the return for David Scarr to Clemson is imminent, and South Carolina could get an answer on its final scholarship at 7 o'clock today north of the border, Corn.
I'll add to that story, too, from what David Hood of TigerNet wrote today, and that is that, yes, the Scarr thing is in the works, but it could be a little while because of the paperwork and all that has to be processed. And
is that visa stuff, or
I don't know. You know, he's been away, and they have to, I guess, run him through the NCAA eligibility ringer to make sure that he hasn't taken any money, done anything with any pro teams. So keep in mind that once he became eligible to play at Clemson after sitting out his transfer year, he had to sit out additional games. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Because of some pro involvement in his past.
Yes.
So they may be checking that out again. You know, this may or may not be a slam dunk. It certainly looks that way, that if he wants to come back and Clemson wants him and nothing's been done otherwise, that he'll be there. But they're just doing their due diligence. And then, yes, South Carolina is waiting for about another 55 minutes or so, or maybe they know the answer about A.J. Lawson, 6'7", out of Canada, who is announcing tonight South Carolina, Creighton, or Tulane, and North Pole Hoops is handling that for him up in Canada. Of course, he had a very good season for GTA Prep, which I am assuming from following them a little bit is the premier prep school team in the country of Canada.
A lot of players come out of there.
And he also was on the Canadian national team under 18 and played very well in the tournament there, losing to the United States in the gold medal game and losing to Josiah James of Portugal, who played for the Americans in that game. So he'll be announcing a little bit after 7 o'clock. So you want to stay with us, and we'll be happy to fill you in on everything that is going on with that. We may or may not be able to bring you some of the audio. I'm not sure how they're going to be feeding it, if it's going to be clear enough and solid enough to bring you any sort of actual announcement. But we'll keep an eye on that for you.
We will definitely be monitoring it. I'm sure everybody who has a Twitter account of Gamecock Import, we will get you the news as soon as we get it here from A.J. Lawson. But again, the one part about this, Corn, is that if you don't get this guy, I don't know where you're going as far as a scholarship for the 2018 season. We've talked about the possibility of both Brownell and Martin holding on to scholarships for use in the 2019 year. There's just really not that much that's left out there for South Carolina to grab that would be worth adding for the 2018-19 season.
Things we don't know about. I mean, this recruiting season, Frank has thrown many curveballs. I didn't see the guys he signed late coming in, to tell you the truth.
You know, I thought about this decision. I thought from the onset, when he visited USC back over Memorial Day weekend, they came in, remember, under the cloud of secrecy. We had him down for visiting the following weekend, but he came in over Memorial Day weekend, and we learned more about him and his family, his father's ties to the state of South Carolina, interviewed his dad about the visit. He gave us some great comments about the visit with Frank Martin and the USC staff and his feelings about the state of South Carolina, et cetera, and said that South Carolina had set the bar very high, and that in his mind at that point in time, it looked like a slam dunk for South Carolina, but they wanted to take some time and visit some other schools just to have something to compare and contrast. Then came the extended period of time when he was with the junior team in Canada. Then as soon as that tournament was over, he hit the road for back-to-back visits to Creighton and then to Tulane. Through that entire period, trying to do our due diligence, we've not once been able to make contact with either his coach or his father to just get an update and find things out. Now, to me, following recruiting, oftentimes if a guy is coming your way, they'll be more than happy to talk to you, take the phone call, update you on things, whether it's the guy or his coach or his dad. We've not been able to get anybody on the phone over this entire period to update us on Lawson, which gives me a little bit of a step back to thinking, well, maybe he's not coming to South Carolina. About the only person that they have talked to, that he has talked to through this process, is the guy from North Pole Hoops, who kind of is like the man up there. And I think he runs, well, I don't know exactly what he does, but I think he kind of runs the circuit up there, the AAU circuit. So maybe, maybe they put the kibosh on any information going anywhere else. I don't know. So, I mean, from a Gamecock standpoint, I hope for them that that's the case and it's not the other way. I do know that Frank Martin told us that when he met with us last week, was it last week?
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah. That he was expecting some good news. Did he say
last Friday?
Expecting or hoping? I think he said expecting or
hoping for some good news is what he said.
Oh, did he say expecting?
And he used the term.
Did he say hoping or expecting?
I think we're hopeful that he can expect some news
soon.
In the
big difference in the two, if you're expecting some good news, and you know something.
What to expect when you're hoping is that the way that works? Remember, of course, that's the same school that Keosi Ezagwu, who the Gamecocks were also went on earlier in the recruiting process, he ended up signing at Baylor.
Well,
UTEP.
UTEP. I'm sorry.
See, and that was UTEP, and that was the case where early on it looked very strong for South Carolina. So that's why I'm just. Taking a little bit of a step back here. I'm not saying it's not going to be South Carolina.
Right.
I just would have liked to have been able to make some contact between the initial one and now to have a little more feel for it.
Well, you won't have to wait for a few more minutes.
We have to wait. If they go on time, then we're talking about 47 more minutes. 46 minutes.
We have a rain delay like we had in the College World Series.
They're doing it at a restaurant, and the whole family hadn't come in yet. We have to wait for them, as we had before. But we can see what Frank Martin is trying to do, and that is trying to replicate the formula that worked to the Final Four. And as I said before, one of the key factors in that run was the fact that you had 3 guys on the floor who effectively could play the point position.
Mm-hmm.
When you talked about Notice and Darius Thornwell and P.J. Dozier. Apparently, the big attraction of this guy is not so much that he's a scorer, but they need scoring, but he also can handle the ball enough that he's played the point.
To
have a guy that's 6'7" that can play the point guard position like PJ does, they create passing lanes that other guys can't create.
If you can handle the basketball, you're automatically in the. If you can handle the basketball and play defense, you're automatically in the door with Frank Martin. And I think one of the things too that South Carolina didn't have last year, they really didn't have anybody who was confident enough to handle the basketball for them in crunch time moments. Sometimes it was Wesley Myers, sometimes it was Azani Gravett, sometimes they had to put the ball in Frank Booker's hands. I mean, that I think from their perspective, they gain this guy, they get another ball handler, you throw him with Kuznard, throw him with Campbell, you throw him in with all the other people, TJ Moss. Those are the guys who you're looking at to kind of take the bull by the horns, because South Carolina is going to need it come next year, because this is a team that will have to grow up very quickly.
Well, they'll have no shortage of point guards on this team. They're just going to be young.
Yes.
And dealing with the pressure of being a young point guard, that can be good. That can be bad.
Other teams are young. It's not
but at least,
completely unfounded.
At least Martin should have some true point guards to turn the ball to, give the ball to, instead of trying to make Hassani Gravett be something that he's probably not cut out to be. And Hassani Gravett, with that pressure off of him, should perhaps take his game up, playing at his natural point of two guard.
And that will come again at 7 o'clock here, thanks to North Pole Hoops. We will get you that announcement when it comes across, as soon as it does. 800-956-7266. What are you reading? Reading something weird?
Well, it's a national story, but we can save it for when we come back.
And we'll come back, and also we'll talk about something that dominated the headlines, ancillarily involved with USC.
We just found it.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Just a couple of things that are going on. We are reminded by the fine folks at USC Upstate that they are on the move, at least conference-wide. They're leaving the Atlantic Sun, going to the Big South. That becomes official on July 1st. I don't know what it's been about that date. We've seen all these conference alignment movements. We saw it in the SEC with A&M in Missouri. We saw it in the Big Ten with Nebraska. July 1 basically begins that athletic calendar.
Fiscal year. I
Year.
think a lot of, like Learfield, our company, our fiscal year ends on June 30th. I imagine that a lot of big companies and these athletic conferences, being big companies, big corporations, probably use June 30th halfway in the year as the end of their fiscal.
That's when Brian's pay cut kicks in, right? The new fiscal year.
His raise, you mean? Did you see raise, Brian? Did you hear that? Yeah. Brian's going to need a raise because he's got a very expensive trip coming up.
He definitely does.
It cost him maybe not an arm and a leg, but at least an arm.
We are all going on some sort of jaunt here in the next month.
Yeah.
You will be
elsewhere. To Vegas, baby.
You'll be elsewhere. I didn't want to divulge it.
Well, my wife just turned 30, so I'm taking her to Vegas. Well, she and I, we're both what we consider, at least me, I consider to be age neutral. You've heard of gender neutral?
Yes.
I'm age neutral. I don't claim an age.
You don't claim
Okay.
Don't identify me with an age.
No.
Don't ask me what my age is. I'm age neutral.
So if you're age neutral, that means if your wife is 30, you didn't bob the cradle.
That's right. That's right. I'm not too far away from that. So we're going to go out there to kind of celebrate that a little bit.
Brian will be in Jamaica next week. I will be in Seattle and Boston at the end of the month of July.
And Jamaica, New York.
But you're going somewhere the rest of the week.
I will be the rest of the week down in beautiful Hilton Head. So that'll be fun. Thanks for blowing the cover.
Oh, was that not supposed to be public information?
I just really don't like to share.
Oh,
when I'm in the
just said
state.
You're going to. Oh, are you afraid of
I don't want to be accosted by people.
You think people are going to come up and seeking autographs and pictures and all that kind of stuff?
Like when I went to the Myrtle Beach, I didn't really publicize that until the last minute, so it's okay. But it'll be
people of Hilton Head, prepare for the arrival of the Pelage.
Well, the Louder Pelagics are already there. My mother and father are already there.
Mom and Dad are there?
They are there.
They didn't come through to say hey to us?
They did not. They in fact said we are intentionally not coming through Columbia because they didn't want to have to encounter you. So
Good idea.
I'm kidding.
Wow.
I'm
Did they take the Pelagic helicopter, the chopper, down to the palatial estate?
They did not. They took the Pelagic Pinto.
Are you playing golf while you're down there?
I don't know if we have a golf outing set up. I'm really not sure about that. I have to check. If anything,
you know what I'm going to do while I'm in Vegas?
What's that?
I'm going to go watch the Las Vegas Aces.
You're going to see Asia?
I don't know. If I drag my wife to a sporting event, she might hit me upside the head.
If you take a picture of it, who to send it to?
Maybe is the hockey team still playing?
No. Hockey is over, but the World Cup is not. In case you were wondering, I know you were.
Hell yeah.
You always been asking me.
I have got World Cup fever.
Speaking of which, there is a women's basketball note, and that is that Alexis Jennings is going to be back for the South Carolina women's basketball team. She'll be back for her 5th collegiate season. She, of course, spent her first year with the Gamecocks this past year after transferring from Kentucky. There was a little bit of ambiguity after the season was over whether or not she was going to try to turn pro or possibly finish her career elsewhere, but she is back at USC, and that's a big, big get for them going into the upcoming year. A local prospect has made his collegiate choice, Corn.
Jacoby Pinckney. This was interesting. Wide receiver out of Dorman, who had early USC and Clemson offers, but they never really pursued him. And as he went along through the recruiting process, he listed Virginia Tech and Michigan and Georgia. Those are some of his top ones, and he ended up committing to Virginia Tech today. Big, tall receiver with some really good numbers, and that Dorman throw it around offense, he's going to have some big-time numbers. So Hokies got to feel like they came into the state and got a good one.
So the stories that, if you saw this morning, it was on the Today Show, and it's basically been on every website that covers sports, and that involves, of course, the parents of Ryan Holinsky. Of course, Ryan's brother, the unfortunate situation that happened with him and his unfortunate suicide with Tyler Herlinski, and some of the information that has come out with the investigation since then has been rather troubling. The biggest thing I think to take from that is that the medical examiner, according to the father, said that he had the brain of a 65-year-old. There were traces of CTE in the brain, and also there was a lot of protein and plaque around the brain that you don't normally find of somebody who was his age. And it just kind of comes back to the question that we kind of brought up at the tail end of last week. Brett Favre had said this, Corn, where he's like, I don't want the youth football to even include tackling anymore. And that's obviously somebody who has had a serious issue when it comes to painkiller addiction and concussions during his career, and just a sad thing to really harp on, because of the fact that so much of this information continues to come out regarding football, and none of it is really good.
Well, first of all, the Herlinskis, a very brave family, of course.
Yes,
to be able to go on national television and also do a big story in Sports Illustrated about this. They have been very public, as has their son Ryan.
Strong faith family.
Yep, and they've been very public in talking about what happened with Ty, and trying to do things to make people aware, basically trying to drive home the feeling that you're not alone out there. If you've got problems, if you've got issues, you can get help. The thing about the brain issues and possible the cause being related to football and all that, they remain a very brave family, knowing that they've got another son who continues to play football at the highest level in high school football, and is moving towards the highest level in college football, and he hopes on to professional football. But they're not really apparently thinking twice about it. You know, I guess they feel like that this is what their son wants to do. They feel like the game is still safe enough for him to play and not suffer any lasting injuries. You know, this whole thing about the football and the brain injuries and the health of players down the road. You know, so many players play the game over all these years. Yes, there are people later in their years who are suffering from a number of different things that they can perhaps trace back to their football activity. But there's also, you know, thousands who played football through high school, college, maybe in the NFL, who are not having any symptoms, who are not suffering, besides the aches and pains of their joints, you know, obviously. So can you just conclusively say that football causes this, you know, alone, or are there other things that come into play? Perhaps not in this particular case with this young man. Maybe he had depression caused by something else. Maybe in the case of these other former football players, it's alcoholism or drug abuse or something else that has come into play that has put their brain in the state that it is. I'm not going to sit here at all and deny the fact that repeated collisions to the brain you know, do not cause some damage. But then again, you know, look at the millions of guys who have been boxers as well. You would think if anybody would be suffering from CTE in a major way, it would be boxers.
Because it's the only sport where the idea is to hurt the opponent.
And hit them in the head repeatedly.
Exactly.
With no protection when you get to the professional ranks.
It's just the same thing as I was saying about when we look at other people in life. Look at Jim Kelly with his bout with cancer because of tobacco. Then you look at a guy like George Burns, who had a cigar in his mouth till he was over 100.
Yeah,
and lived to be over 100.
I don't think there's any absolute answer to it.
Everybody's body reacts differently.
Yes.
But the one thing I think that we are finding is that we are finding more and more of these cases when it comes to former football players. I mean, Dave Dorson was one, Junior Seau was another, and you know, we have other cases of people who are currently living who have had to go through unfortunate situations. Heck, Dwight Clark had the situation where he just passed away after bouts of dementia, and these are things that unfortunately continue to be pervasive, and we'll continue to talk about it. If you have a thought on it, 800-956-7266. Are we getting to the point where the NFL game is not sustainable because of the conduct and content of the contact involving the head trauma that unfortunately caused a depression with Ryan Herlinski's brother Tyler? We'll continue that when we come back here on Sports Talk. So this story, literally, this came across Corn's wire here. Police are investigating a body found at Janoris Jenkins' home in New Jersey. He's been in Florida since the completion of Giants minicamp 2 weeks ago. How do you find the body at your home like that? Like that's bad.
TMZ found it. TMZ Sports reported about it. Jenkins was in Florida at the time.
Yep.
The Major Crimes Unit is investigating. His home is in Fairlawn, which is in Jersey. They found the body in the basement of the home, and just looking for further information here. Body was found by a worker investigating strangulation, suffocation as the cause of death, per the NFL Network. He was in Florida at the time. Prosecutors have started a homicide investigation. Victim not identified, unclear if Jenkins knows the deceased. So, not good for anybody there.
It's not going to be good for anybody as well.
Here's something else here about this story. He had family members staying at the home recently, according to ESPN. Last night, someone claiming to be Jenkins' brother boarded a flight at Newark International, headed to Fort Lauderdale, got off the plane after causing delays in takeoff because, quote, he was too scared to fly. That's according to ESPN. Somebody claiming to be Jenkins' brother.
Interesting.
Well, you know, it's not similar, but I can remember a guy that played for the Falcons years ago was traded. No, he signs a free agent with Seattle. Patrick Kearney, defensive end. Lady claimed that she was raped in his house, and he was on the other side of the world.
He's married to a young lady who works at ESPN now, or used to at least. Now.
Somebody was in his house, and he's on the other side of the country.
Make sure you know who has your keys.
A couple of quick notes I want to throw out here real quick. First of all, they have updated the basketball odds after the most recent transfer to Kentucky. Was that Reed, big guy from Stanford?
Yes.
Now Kentucky, this is from Bovada, has gone from 10-1 to 6-1 to win the national championship. Duke has gone from 11-2 to 13-2.
Calipari will find a way to blow it.
Kansas is staying at 8-1, and Villanova from 9-1 to 17-2. Clemson is on the list. Tigers have gone from 70-1 to 80-1. You would think that their odds would have gotten a little shorter, considering I'm not sure that getting Scarra back would affect the odds makers, but having the two guards back and
the thing that affects them again is the loss of Gabe DeVoe. You have to pick up basically 20 points per game of scoring, and somebody has to, in that realm of players who will turn into major contributors, someone has to score double digits per game. They don't have to necessarily score 20, but someone's got to score somewhere between 10 or 11, and they got to find 8 to 10 points per game from somebody else or some other collection of players.
From the front court.
From the Citadel, Cameron Wells, all-time leading scorer in Bulldog basketball history, has been chosen for the Hall of Fame class of 2018. He is going in along with wrestler Andrew Delaney, Division I All-American, former president Bud Watts III. Also going into the Hall, former football quarterback Gene Brown and baseball pitcher Brian Rogers. General Watts will be enshrined as an honorary member. The induction banquet will be September 14th. And some personal sad news for me and other golfers around the Midlands area. Got word today that the Country Club of South Carolina at Crickentry will be closing up shop as of July 8th. Back in the day, going back 25, 30 years, that was one of the prime golf spots in South Carolina. It was a beautiful golf course. Grant Bennett at the time was the general manager, ran the place, golf instructions. His sons worked with him. And the course, as devilish as it was and is, was always in great shape. And I always hate to hear when golf courses close because, and I asked somebody at the club today when I double checked on the information, I said, well, what are they going to do with it? You know, because usually when they close a golf course, they turn it into real estate property.
Yeah, or somebody else buys it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be for sale if anybody wants to buy the land. But he said, hey, man, just letting it go.
That's terrible.
Just letting it go.
Unfortunate news.
So your last round out there could be July 8th.
This is, again, a continuation of what we were talking about earlier. Do you believe we've gotten past the point of football being safe for youth? 800-956-7266. Did Hayden play football?
Yes, he played at Richland Northeast. He was on the team.
Would you have let him play now, knowing what you know?
Well, you know,
the fact that you didn't automatically say yes is telling.
I'm going to say this: football, in my particular case, for him was a great experience. He loved every minute of it. He was on a terrific team, And so he was a reserve player, so I didn't have to worry
Same.
too much about him being out there, very much.
Him too, right?
Yeah.
Me too.
But I have to admit that, the times that he would get out there and get a chance to play, you do, as a parent, you do kind of hold your breath. And it's sort of like letting your child go out and drive somewhere. You hold your breath until they get to where they're going. So that's kind of how I felt about football. But I always thought that the positives of football and what he learned and what he experienced outweighed anything else.
800-956-7266. Alex puts this forth on Twitter to answer your question. I'm glad my kids have no desire to play football. I mean, I played very similar to Hayden.
So here's the question.
Situation.
I didn't ever force him.
No.
That's just what he chose to do, baseball and football.
Well, I did it as a way to make friends.
Do you push? Do you even suggest, like I've got a grandson in Atlanta, and I have a feeling that his parents have no interest in him getting involved in football whatsoever. The other sports or that thing where you kick the ball around on the ground, you can't touch it with your hands.
That's soccer.
Yeah, that thing. Probably get involved with that.
You can
Swimming,
get hurt in that too.
Absolutely, you can.
I think there's an inherent risk anytime there's an inherent risk when your child basically learns how to walk. I mean, that's, I think, the thing that you have to at least accept. And I'm not trying to sound morbid about it. But like you said, I gained a lot of positive things from football. There are a lot of people who I know who, as an experience from football, they liked the camaraderie so much they did things like join the Army or join the Navy or join the Marines, or they went into the police force, or they're able to build team skills that you don't necessarily get from other team sports.
And the one thing is, you got to be vigilant, and that is, you got to think on the field. The one player I can think about, and he's kind of shorter than other people, but I think about, and Corn, you saw him play for several years. Warwick Dunn knew when to go down.
Right.
He never took what you call a vicious hit.
Tom Brady did the same thing.
But he played with a veracity that told you he could get hit at any time. But for whatever reason, it's almost like a split second. He anticipate that somebody was coming from some direction. He just go down and they fly over the top of him.
But you have to play football with a certain amount of
indestructibility or thoughts.
Macho-ness. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Just feeling like
machismo is what you're looking for.
Machismo. You got to feel like you're the baddest dude on the planet, and you're going to run through somebody, run over somebody. And listen, you go to any practices from the junior varsity level all the way through the NFL, the little bit that the NFL actually practices. But I mean, the coaches are pushing you to knock that man down, be physical. The game is, as they say, those who play at the highest level, it's a contact sport. It's a collision sport. It's more than just a contact sport. It is a collision sport. Athletes have gotten bigger, faster, and stronger, and thus the collisions have coincided with that in terms of their violence. And the result is, when it comes to head injuries, I guess there are more than there have been, or maybe they're just being reported now. They're caught more easily than they were 20, 30 years ago. I have said from the first time that this discussion came to light, you got to do something with the helmet. And people say, well, take the helmet off,
I say take
the face mask off, or whatever. If you do, I've just said, just do something more to make the helmet not so much a brickbat as it is now. And softball technology, man, it works for NASCAR. Think of something to apply to a football helmet.
More on this when we return, including some recruiting news and another signing for a former Gamecock baseball player. Next on Sports Talk.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Just confirmed from the mouth of Corn, Ryan Helinski will join us here at the top of the hour. His family was the subject of a documentary by Sports Illustrated, and then his parents this morning were on the Today Show to talk about the suicide of Ryan's brother Tyler, who prominently, of course, played at Washington State. And Ryan has similar aspirations in the collegiate world, of course, committed to South Carolina in the 2019 class out of Southern California, and continued bravery of his family. I like that you mentioned that word, Corn. It's just very, very inspiring to see how they've continued to fight this unfortunate demon. And we've been asking the question here on our program, and you can also join at 800-956-7266. Do you believe that we've gotten past the point of football being safe for youths, or really anybody for that matter? This is from Lawrence. He says that football's CTE issue is political. If concussions are the driving factor, why are hockey, boxing, MMA, and soccer exempted from the hysteria? I would say because football is more popular than all the sports that he said combined, at least in the United States. Soccer, of course, more popular worldwide, and of course, more popular every 4 years when the World Cup comes. But the reason why football, I don't think has anything to do with politics, guys. It has everything to do with the fact that there's a popularity of the sport, and there's a lot of people who like it, at least entertainment-wise.
And also, let's face it, there have been stories about, the NFL knowing for years that there was some damage being done, and kind of kept it on the QT. But sports now, as I said before, now even in basketball, you catch an elbow to the head, you may be in concussion protocol. So they are taking some steps toward watching what happens.
And the soccer thing, I mean, they've taken steps where you can't head now until you get to high school, I believe is the way it is.
Well, I just think throughout football, the later you can start kids into the contact side of it is probably the better. There's no reason. The thing about football is there's a lot of players who do extremely well in football who don't pick it up until their senior year in high school. They get that 1 year of experience. They love it. They get noticed, especially if you're a big guy, and they find a college scholarship somewhere, and boom, they're off to the races. It's not like really baseball and basketball where you have to hone your skills at a very early age to maybe climb that ladder. I see cases where a lot of football players pick it up kind of late, but maybe the later that you get involved with the contact side of it, the better. I still think major improvements need to be made in equipment. And I look at video today, especially NFL guys, it's like they have no equipment on whatsoever. And you look back at video of the 60s, 70s, man, look at Ronnie Lott, big old shoulder pads and thigh pads, and it might not look as sleek, but it's got to protect you better. And the necks, I mean, there's nothing wrong with putting on as much protection as you can. Like we said, the machismo factor is part of football and the thinking. But if you want to keep the sport alive and vibrant and growing, you're going to have to protect people better. Just like NASCAR had to take steps to do all it can to eliminate deaths in NASCAR racing. And they came up with the softwall technology, the Hans device, all the other different things inside the cockpit to protect the driver. And thank goodness it's paid off for the most part.
The unfortunate part of it is it took the unfortunate death of basically the most popular driver in the sport for them to get to that point. And I think that's the one thing, whether it comes out as something that happens to an active player or something that happens, again, we have these situations that continue to pop up and they're more and more prevalent. I'm hoping we don't have many or any more before something more substantive is done. This is Don who writes us on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. My son plays, and I will encourage my 3-year-old to do the same when he's old enough. The best times of my life were when I was playing football, the games, the locker room, the brotherhood, nothing else like it. And we continue to kind of get your reaction here at SportsTalkSC.com.
And I've had this conversation with Corey Miller a lot, and he thinks I'm a wuss about, football. I mean, listen, the guy, he played at the highest level for 9 years, so I respect his opinion. And same thing with Rick Sanford, any of these pro guys that you talk to, and I'm sure they look at guys like us and go, shut up, you know what you're talking about, man. We played at the highest level. And they're right. we don't know what we're talking about from that standpoint. We can only share our opinions based on what we see. And I think now, we don't want to see somebody decleated out there like we used to. Maybe we used to get our jollies that way, but maybe not so much anymore.
The one thing I don't envy about guys like Corey or Rick or anybody else who had a long or any kind of career in the NFL, I don't envy their pharmaceutical bill.
No,
because guess what? They're taking Percocets like M&M's.
I would like to see them, of course, continue to coach away the spearing, get rid of that. Of course, it's been outlawed, but now you have to coach it up, and I think we're seeing progress there. And I'll tell you something else I'd like to see them get rid of, and I think they're taking steps toward that is, and again, this is me talking not as a football player, just as somebody who wants to see the sport continue. You got to take out the crackback block, the block where, especially on returns, where a guy coming down, he's maybe even a big lineman or whatever. He's lumbering, trying to make a play on an interception return, and there's a guy just waiting to plant him. It looks great and ooh and ahs, but the punishment done. That's how you end a career and hurt somebody.
That's like car accident stuff. I mean, like I said, I've been saying this. All this talk about eliminating the kickoff, I'm all for it.
I'm not talking about putting dresses on them and putting flags on them. I mean, there's still football is a beautiful sport. I'm not exactly, crazy about the pitch and catch aspect that dominates football now. I miss the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I miss the fullback. I miss, long drives that you ran the ball on, 12 out of 15 plays. Ground chuck. Give me a little ground chuck in here from time to time.
Well, I'm afraid
Chuck Reedy reference there for those you don't know.
I'm afraid to say this. While people think they're modernizing the game, actually, when you try to get 100 offensive plays or whatever, you actually increasing the danger, especially when guys get worn out mentally. But again, I go back to examples. I've seen example after example of the career of Mike Singletary, who depleted a bunch of people. But guess what? He hit with a technique that both guys got up every time.
Recruiting.
Yeah, and look at the pads he was wearing, too. I'm telling you, that's got something to do with it. All right. Jacoby Pinckney of Dorman announced his commitment to Virginia Tech this afternoon, choosing the Hokies over Michigan, Alabama, and Georgia. 65 catches, 1,075 yards, and 7 touchdowns last season. Clemson target linebacker Spencer Lytle will announce his decision August 4th. He said Clemson is 100% on his short list. Did not disclose any others, though he's been considering Wisconsin, Texas, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Cal, and TCU. But he said Clemson and Wisconsin stand out the most right now. USC target defensive back Chris Steele out in California, according to the Rivals website that covers the Trojans, has committed to Southern Cal. Boy, the guy that wrote this for Rivals was just getting reamed by the Twitter nuts out there who feel like he's stealing the kid's moment. He's supposed to announce his commitment, I think it's July 4th. Steele visited Southern Cal last weekend. I can't read the guy's stuff out there. I can't read the stuff out there because we don't subscribe to it.
Paywall.
And he put up a story about the headline said why I broke the story on Chris Steele committing to Southern Cal. So he's trying to defend himself.
He's like a very self-important jerk to me.
Linebacker Micaiah Tongue of Baton Rouge cut his list to Arizona State, Georgia, and Texas. Clemson was on his previous short list. USC made the final 6 with linebacker Jamie Petway of Albany, Georgia, with Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Louisville, FAU, and Tennessee. Receiver Kevion Mullins of Memphis last night confirmed an earlier report in the day from Gamecock Central that he will not announce a commitment tomorrow at the Rivals Combine as he had planned. He's down to USC in Memphis. He said, quote, "I don't have a date. It could be any time." He wants to bring his family to USC for a visit before finalizing his plans. Got an update on Vonta Bentley to come your way, and an update on the most recent commitment by USC. And, of course, we're standing by for the announcement from A.J. Lawson. Just got a text message from Ryan Holinsky. He may not be able to be with us because of practice issues.
Interesting. We will continue to monitor all that when we return. Hour 2 of Sports Talk. Come your way.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back to South Carolina Radio Network on this Tuesday night. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes here with you. Telephone number 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Email talkback@SportsTalkSC and also on Twitter @SportsTalkSC. Looks like we have an answer, Corn.
Mm-hmm. Just opening it up here on Instagram. And did he do a little video thing here? Looks like we got a little video thing we got to listen to.
It is done. A.J. Lawson is a South Carolina Gamecock.
Very good.
And that will conclude the real building of the 2018 South Carolina roster. How's that for recruiting?
6'7" swing man from Canada who played very well this season for GTA Prep and played very well for the national team. And it's a big pickup for South Carolina. You look at their class now with this commitment, and you see some good length in the backcourt, Pro. You see good length from the standpoint of the wings and the point guards. This is something that Frank Martin likes to have. He likes tall guards with long wingspans, guys that can guard. So you add him to the list for South Carolina. You've got a 6'4" Jermaine Couisnard in the backcourt, a 6'4" TJ Moss, 6'3" Trey Campbell, a 6'6" Keyshawn Bryant, a 6'4" Jair Bolden, though he has to sit out. And now you're going to add a 6'7" A.J. Lawson to the clan.
Yeah, a lot of this predicated on the success they have is once they get into a strength and conditioning program. But let's face it, last year, South Carolina, you can point to, why didn't they make the tournament last year? That 6-game losing streak. What was the Groundhog Day replication of mistakes that you saw in that 6-game losing streak? They could not stop the other guy's big guard who got wherever he wanted, when he wanted, and got his shot off. With some length in there now, there's going to be some arms and hands in the face when guys try to just take over at winning time this year. So it'd be interesting to see how they play defense next year with this added length.
I like it. I like the pickup. I like where Frank Martin was very patient. I think this part of it really had been the most harrowing part of it for South Carolina fans, because they really had to struggle after losing Brian Bowen to fill these last 2 to 3 to 4 spots on this roster. I'm not going to sit here and automatically side on states that I like this basketball roster better than I liked them going into last year. But I think the one thing that is different going into this year is that, and it kind of goes back to stuff that Frank said a week ago Friday, the expectations of the returning guys are more greatly known, and that will filter on to the youth of this ball club. And I think they're going to find out very, very quickly that when they get there in the summer, they don't play defense. They're not going to really go anywhere.
Agreed. I mean, that's a big part of what Frank Martin demands. But the reviews on this kid are very, very positive, especially off of what he did with the Canadian national team. While we're doing recruiting, let me go ahead and wrap up the recruiting report for tonight. So A.J. Lawson commits to South Carolina 6'7" out of Brompton, Ontario, Canada, and that does fill up the Gamecock roster. He took officials to USC Creighton and Tulane and chose the Gamecocks, the first team that he visited. The Gamecocks set the bar really high for him on that official visit the latter part of May over the Memorial Day weekend, and they were able to hold off a couple of teams. Boy, Mike Dunleavy's got to be saying, take my diploma and keep it. Keep little players from Tulane that he has been recruiting as well.
And South Carolina fans will say that's a payback for letting Junior go to Duke.
True that. 21 points per game for him. His coach, David Cooper, had told us previously that his size, his skill set, his ability to push the ball all stand out. He controls the basketball at his size. He sees the floor, has a really good feel, gets his teammates involved, and he can guard multiple positions. So all that is good. Couple of more notes here in recruiting tonight. Back on the football side of things, Vonta Bentley, linebacker out of Birmingham, a guy that Clemson wants a lot, and they lead for him still on his most recent visit. Not only did he meet with Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables, he got time with the university president, Jim Clemens, and he said that really made him feel wanted by Clemson. The fact that Dabo Swinney's been on him personally, and the fact that he met the university president and had a meeting with him more than any other school has done with him, and that's really opened his eyes to Clemson. So they lead.
That's the presidential treatment you mentioned in your article on SportsTalkSC.
Yeah, kind of a catchy headline, right?
Very nice.
You like that?
Very nice.
Anyway, but I like this too. He goes, on his visit, I spent the night with 2 other players. Both of them were freshmen, and we talked about why they chose Clemson. Also was around, I forgot his name, number 42.
He's a big dude. He likes the Power Rangers.
Sometimes I just love the honesty of these guys. Anyway, he said talking to those people.
Christian Wilkins for the uninitiated.
Yeah, he said talking to those guys, a big impact on his thinking. Plus, he said Todd Bates has been recruiting him really, really well. He's coming back to Clemson for the All-In Cookout in July. Alabama has been his only other visit thus far, though he had planned to go to LSU last Friday. That trip fell through. He might visit Tennessee at some point. LSU, he said, would be the closest competition for Clemson right now. He does not, however, plan to make a summer decision. And finally, USC recently offered athlete Trayvon Moss, 6 feet 205 of Tulsa. You might think, well, that's a long shot for the Gamecocks in terms of getting a guy out of Oklahoma. But no, he's very interested in South Carolina. His recruiting is picking up steam now because in his freshman and sophomore years, he was beset with injuries. So his junior year, he was healthy. He turned in some incredible numbers, both on offense and playing kind of a hybrid linebacker safety position for his high school. Mike Peterson is recruiting him for USC, and after seeing him on film, made him the offer, and they're coming after him. He said he had 165 tackles last season with 16 sacks and 6 interceptions, and he scored 20 touchdowns. Tennessee, North Carolina, Oregon State, Louisville, Washington State, Virginia, Northwestern are some other offers. But he said USC is in good position. He said, quote, I would say they are definitely top tier on my list right now. He says, I am taking it slow. He says, I will take some visits, and South Carolina probably will be the first school that he will visit when he gets around to doing so. He does plan to graduate early and sign early.
His recruiting, look it up on our website, sportstalksc.com, and also on Twitter, use the hashtag STRecruiting. So set the men's basketball roster as it sits right now. When it comes in here, the commitments for the class of 2018, the guys who will come in, A.J. Lawson, Keyshawn Bryant, T.J. Moss, Alonzo Frink, and Jermaine Couisnard. Those are the 5 incoming guys. Lawson, the 6'6" combo guard. Bryant, the 6'7" forward out of Florida. T.J. Moss, the point guard just out of Las Vegas, 6'3", 170. Frink, of course, comes from the same high school that developed Chris Silva, the forward, 6'8", out of Jersey City, New Jersey. And Jermaine Couisnard, of course, Montverde Prep out of Florida, 6'4" guard, also a combo as well. And that, of course, leads to the existing players that include Minaya, Gravett, Silva, others as well.
Can you win with that team?
Yes. Because you have a number of players who can, I'll use Eddie Fogler's term, dribble, think, and shoot. And you need as many of those as possible. And the potential, as I said before, on the defensive end, to really bother some of the great shooting guards you will see in the SEC and in the
don't forget also
Jair
season. Bolden and Trey Campbell. Also, Bolden having to sit Campbell gets the immediate play.
Do they have enough age? Remember how last year one of the things that coaches talked about who were making the tournament, the age in their backcourt was a big part of making the tournament. Or not making the tournament if you're young.
We'll continue to bat it around. We also have some phone calls to get to, which we will bring you on the other side.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
So if you missed it earlier, A.J. Lawson, Canadian combo guard, is now a South Carolina Gamecock. Canadian combo coming to Carolina. We're efforting an opportunity to try and talk to A.J. either today or tomorrow, so hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to the latest addition of the Gamecock roster, and certainly also we'll try to effort something from Frank Martin as well later on this week in order to now talk about his completed roster, at least when that officially comes to pass here on South Carolina Radio Network.
Actually, on Thursday, the SEC is having its annual summer basketball teleconference.
Well, that should be fun.
And so Frank will be right there. I'm sure you'll be listening from the beach at Hilton Head.
I'm thinking no.
Okay. We'll handle it for you.
I'm thinking that might not. That might be when I'll plan my golf round, because that'd be the only thing that would be less excruciating is listening to a summer basketball teleconference.
It's the SEC's attempt to pump up the hoops in the league and let people know that they're more than just football and baseball and women's basketball. Did
Frank has tweeted out something. He says, "Yo, Dwayne, notice you started something here with Toronto. We the North, the six, my dudes." Don't know if that has to do with the fact that maybe Dwayne Notice was kind of in on him just for his Canadian connections.
Probably doesn't hurt. Probably doesn't hurt. Was there anything else from Staley's presser today that
other than Alexis Jennings, not of note?
I saw one comment where she made, who was the little guard that was going to transfer?
Cuevas Moore.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. She said that at the graduation ceremony. She said, was wishing her well and said, are you ready to go on to West Virginia and continue? And Cuevas Moore said, I don't think so, or something like that.
Right.
That kind of started the ball rolling in her staying. So, despite the losses from her team from this past season, sounds like she can put a pretty good looking team on the court.
Although Asia Wilson.
Yeah, but
it's a big loss.
But you knew that was going to go, though. This is not pro.
I know.
You can't sign it to a multi-year contract.
I know. I'm just saying, if anybody who loses that player outside of maybe one program in the country, you're not going to expect the same kind of output, and it'll be a hard thing for them to get to, especially because they also have to go up to play that program in their building.
It'll be interesting to see, because this almost seems like more of her kind of team, because it's going to be guard loaded.
Oh, yeah. It'll be very guard loaded. 800-956-7266. We were talking about this earlier in the program, and it involves the appearance of Ryan Helinski's parents talking about Tyler Herlinsky, his brother who committed suicide, the old Washington State quarterback. They're a subject of an SI documentary and also subject of an interview that took place this morning on the Today Show on NBC. It involved, of course, talk about Tyler Herlinsky's brain being that of a 65-year-old man and having a plaque that is consistent with CTE, the brain disease, which has gained a lot of notoriety here in the presence of some unfortunate situations that have come about, the deaths of football players, many of whom have been in the NFL and others who haven't, like Tyler. So we've been talking about whether or not you feel that football is at the level right now where you find it safe, whether it's for youths, whether it's for high schoolers, whether it's even for people who are entering the professional ranks. 800-956-7266. I say that as a preamble because we've had Scott, who's been holding for a while here from Pageland, and he joins us here on Sports Talk. Scott, thanks for holding here on Sports Talk. Good afternoon and evening.
Good afternoon, guys. Just talking about the helmets and all. I was just wanting to ask y'all guys, has anybody thrown out the experiment of using a dense memory foam possibly to build helmets out of, so you don't have two hard shells collide with each other? You have basically like a safer wall, hitting a safer wall.
That's been that's been my argument. Now, I have brought that up to coaches, and they come back to me and say, if you do that, part of the problem is the helmets would stick and the energy would be concentrated right there. The slick helmets, when the helmets hit now, because they are slick, the energy, they slide,
right?
And the energy is dissipated, whatever it is, it's spread out.
I was told there'd be no math.
Yeah. The energy is not as concentrated as it would be if you took softer material This is what I'm told. If you
Uh-huh.
took the softer material and they hit, and the helmets would then kind of stick together. You're right. No math and no science here.
Have they tried? Is anybody tried?
No, but I tell you what was tried, and I go way back old school.
Leather helmets?
At a guy that used to run with his head a lot and run over people, and that's Larry Sonka. Kept getting concussions. The Miami Dolphins equipment manager fitted him with a helmet with bags that they would fill with water. And I think he ceased having concussions after they used that helmet. But by that time, he was near 30 anyway. But they used thick plastic bags filled with water inside a special helmet they had for him.
Like I've said before, take the helmets away, you take away the headshots. I mean, no one's going to want to use their head to hit anybody if they don't have helmet protection. I mean, maybe you go to like what they have in rugby with these with those little soft shell helmets for some of the guys who might have had head trauma and head issues. But in my mind, it just doesn't seem to me ideal to keep to keep perpetuating this situation.
I tell you, it would be awfully strange to be in a stadium this day and age and looking at a football game and seeing guys in pads but no helmet.
Well, here's the other part of this too, and this is
don't you think you would still be susceptible? Think about it now. This is football, so you're playing players what they're doing, but you're playing with no helmet. Okay, and so you hand the ball to the running back. He's got to run through the line of scrimmage. You got guys diving at you, heads exposed. Running back lowers his head to get through. I mean, the natural instinct of the running back is to lower his head to break through tackles. I'm not so sure that's the answer to expose the noggin to that kind of attack.
You change some technique. It's all you have to do is you got to change some techniques. Maybe it leads to some different things. Maybe even it leads to lesser of the shoulder padding as well, just so that you don't have those types of collisions. But again, in my mind, the temptation to use your head as a missile is something that I think is the biggest problem here.
I anticipate other problems, and that's my job. I think of what a problem could be. Here's the weapon they could use that they used when they first started playing football: the mouth. Guys were getting noses, ears bitten, scars in the top of the head when guys would hit and the teeth would roll the top the head.
Well, maybe get them like a literally like the old school hockey goal mask,
a muzzle,
something like that. Well, here's the other part of this too. You mentioned seeing guys without helmets. That could be an amazing marketing opportunity for the National Football League, just because I think so much of where the NFL, they struggle to market guys who are not quarterbacks. I mean, the only guy I can think of that is not a quarterback or a skill position player that is marketed heavily by the NFL is J.J. Watt.
Tell you something else about the NFL, though, that I think is part of their issue, and the players alone are the ones responsible here. So many of them don't wear mouth guards.
Right.
And I once read a Sports Illustrated story.
Or jock straps either, for that matter.
Well, I'm not too concerned about that part of their bodies.
They wear a cup, though.
Okay,
you would be if you were playing.
That's their decision. Okay, maybe they're trying to
hashtag respect my decision. No interviews.
It's a new way of Planned Parenthood, I guess, for the NFL. I don't know.
Stop it. That's nice.
In this SI story, this doctor, this brain surgeon or brain doctor said the mouthpiece absorbs a lot of the contact energy, and when you don't wear the mouthpiece, of course,
yes, it's a shock absorber.
You lead yourself open for additional energy and shock going through the head area. But so many of them don't wear the mouth guard.
It legit,
especially quarterbacks.
It legit ticks me off. I see this with Cam Newton all the time. I hate to pick on him, but to see them when they're up at the line of scrimmage, waiting for a play to start, and their mouthpiece is in their helmet.
But there's no rule in the NFL. But college, you have to have the mouthpiece.
There's a problem. Coach is telling you to communicate on the field. You can't put the thing in and talk at this.
It's almost as stupid as people who during a day game have the sunglasses on the lid without actually putting them on. That's also something that grinds my gears, if you will. Kerry Tharp will go NASCAR racing next. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. AJ Lawson has put out a little Instagram video. We'll give you a chance to kind of listen to a little bit of that. We are scheduled at the moment to hear from Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington Raceway, as the NASCAR gentlemen go to the place where Corn just came from. But while we await Kerry, let's head to John in Myrtle Beach. We were talking about the helmet and the NFL players and youths and all that. Let's hear from John. What's John got to say? Hello, John.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to call and talk about your helmet. Look, I'm not a very smart person. It takes a lot more smarter people than me to figure out whether software helmets stick together and create more energy. But there is a company that I've seen a couple times, and there was actually an article I read, I think about a month and a half ago, about a company that the NFL, they're testing helmets with it. I'm not going to say their name. I don't want to sit here, but it's spelled V-I-C-I-S. I think it might be pronounced vicious, but it's called the 01. But I've seen some videos on it, and it's a double-layered helmet, and they actually use fingers, almost like a mattress inside the helmet to absorb impact. And I will say they're very. I think it's the cutting edge. I think it's the future. The problem is obviously the cost. The pros are going to get to wear it first, but as technology and as they get cheaper to build, and as they get them cheaper, it'll trickle down eventually to the kids and lower the little league and all that. But I just wanted to bring that up and say there are companies out there doing everything they can to make the game safer for people's heads, so we can keep enjoying the game of football.
Appreciate that, John. Thank you so much for the call and for the insight. I do this to expertly transition to our friend Kerry Tharp, Darlington Raceway, and KT, as we've been talking about this kind of all evening, just the safety in sports that involve collisions like yours does as well. And I'm sure when you were a big part of the initiatives to help improve the safety of NASCAR, it's something that continues to be at the forefront of everything that we at least talk about here in the world of sports.
Well, it certainly does, Will, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. But when I was at NASCAR for 12 years, I worked at the Research and Development Center in Concord, North Carolina, and their top initiative was safety, driver safety, fan safety, racetrack safety, and they did some remarkable things and made some remarkable improvements in regards to safety. Stock car racing is a dangerous sport, and it always will be, and it will never be safe enough. But the improvements they made with the helmets, with the head and neck restraints, with the side panels of the car, with the seat, with the safety belts. All the things that they've done to make it a safer sport has saved lives. And but sports are many of the sports that are competed out there right now are high collision sports, football, soccer in particular, hockey, and certainly NASCAR. But you've got to protect your heroes. You got to protect the folks that people want to come out and see. And so that's certainly a big topic and something that takes top priority.
I've often mentioned here on the show, we're not going to dwell on this because this isn't your area of expertise. I know that you are not a rocket scientist by any means. You're a pretty smart guy, don't get me wrong. But I've often thought the safer barrier technology, the softball technology that they use in NASCAR, if you kind of took that and applied it to the football helmet, that you could benefit from that in football in some form or fashion. Have you ever discussed that with any of the people at NASCAR who deal with that kind of stuff?
Well, I tell you, when I was in NASCAR, we did have conversations with NASA. We did a lot of research with NASA as far as the helmets. We did a lot of research with the armed forces as far as the helmets and the restraints that you have in a lot of that the big equipment. So there's a lot of cross referencing there. I certainly think that that's something that could be explored. Because those safer walls, or as you call them, safer barriers, were they were devised to lessen and reduce the blow when you hit at a high speed at a racetrack. And so, those walls have been remarkable improvements on when you have a high collision at upwards of 200 miles an hour. I would say right now that just about every single square inch of racetrack on the Cup Series has safer barrier at some point. I'm probably wrong. I'm sure that not every single square inch, but it's improved so much over the years. But that's a technology that, you know, that possibly could be applied to the helmet when it comes to football to soften the blow that the head gets when it's struck and that type of thing. But we did a lot of work with NASA and the military when it came to something like that.
All right, last thing on this topic. Have you ever talked to a veteran driver who was around before the safer barriers and is driving now and asked the difference, what it feels like inside the cockpit when you hit the old-fashioned wall versus a similar collision today?
Well, I remember Jeff Burton, and of course Jeff's not driving now, but he drove up until a couple of years ago, and he was somebody that had been, you know, driving when there wasn't all the safety equipment around, and he said it was you know, each and every weekend you just better, you know, you better hope and pray that nothing happens, because I mean they basically were an open face helmet with you know, 3 or 4 straps on the restraints, but really no head and neck restraints. It's amazing the advancements they've made. But Jeff Burton was always one that I talked to, and he was always amazed about the safety improvements that the sport has made. And he certainly was a big proponent about, you know, safety, the advancements that have been made, particularly since the early 2000s. Of course, we know we lost Dale Earnhardt in 2001, and that accelerated so many of the safety improvements.
Talking with Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington Raceway. Last weekend, the NASCAR gentlemen were turning left and right in Sonoma Raceway with the road course there. Of course, the winner was Martin Truex Jr., his 3rd win of the year. What were your observations in Sonoma, KT?
Well, you know, when you go to a road course, sometimes you try to get the unexpected, and really the thing that stuck out in my mind was the call that his crew chief Cole Pearn made late in the race. He kind of hoodooed everybody into thinking they were going to go into pit and take on tires, and lo and behold, they decided to stay out, and so they gained a lot of track position. That won them the race. I'm not sure if they had the best car. I thought the 4 car was the best car, Kevin Harvick, and they went down to pit road when everybody thought Truex was doing it. Sometimes you got to do that. It's called reverse strategy. You got to do the exact opposite of what the best car is doing, and that paid off for Truex. So, you know, it was kind of an interesting race because Truex won by about 13 or 14 seconds. And you really don't like to see that, obviously, when you go to a race, particularly a road course. But, you know, sometimes strategy pays off, and it certainly did for him. I hated that A.J. Allmendinger missed a shift and blew out his engine, because I think he would have been a contender because he's an excellent road course racer. But, you know, Truex wins again, and right now it's Truex, Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick that's holding the day.
And what's happening at your place? Because we got July 4th coming up next week, and then you know what the next big holiday weekend is after that.
Absolutely. Well, we have a big event at our place actually on Saturday, Phil, June 30th from 5 to 10. We have the Freedom Fest that the Chamber of Commerce puts on, fireworks and rides, entertainment and that type of thing. But right now our focus is twofold: selling tickets and making sure that our construction project finishes up in good order. And so been very, very busy with both of those initiatives. You know, the project's coming along. There's really no room to spare. You know, they're gonna probably start working some at night to beat the heat and also make sure that they stay on schedule. So, but it's going to be such a great experience when all that is done. The new seats are going to be in. The Wall of Honor is going to be in. It's going to be a better Darlington without question.
Give the number for the tickets.
The tickets is probably the best way is get on www.darlingtonraceway.com. And we've got a lot of different packages. The best one for the folks in the state of South Carolina is called the Palmetto Home Track Offer. It's a great deal. I encourage fans to take advantage of that.
Thanks, KT. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.
Final segment next on Sports Talk.
I was blessed to have all these offers.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Well, is today just like news of the weird day or what when it comes to sports? We had the Janoris Jenkins situation where he had found a dead body in his house while he was in Florida. And now we're getting a story out of Atlanta. Cobb County Police have confirmed that there was a dead body found in a freezer at SunTrust Park, home of the Atlanta Braves. The deceased person was a third-party contractor found by another person who works for that company and is currently under investigation. What do we got going on now?
So are they working on construction? He got locked in there? He got hit in the head? What? We don't know.
I have no idea. And there was the other story. Were you telling me this about a guy who tried to jump onto a Delta flight from the runway?
No, he tried. He jumped out of the flight onto the tarmac.
That's crazy. Something in the water, guys.
Not talking about crazy people on planes right now.
No.
Don't want to go there.
Because you're flying soon? Is that
correct?
Just as long as the people are sane who's sitting in the cockpit.
I just want it to be quiet. I just want it to be calm and quiet.
It is all calm and quiet on the recruiting trail. Local segue for the South Carolina Gamecocks as Frank Martin has filled the final spot on his roster for the 2018 season with A.J. Lawson, the combo guard out of Brampton, Ontario, Canada. This is from his Instagram, and it was put out by the folks at North Pole Hoops. This is him announcing his commitment to South Carolina and some ancillary comments following.
I was blessed to have all these offers and taking all these visits. It was a great opportunity. It came down to who was the best fit for me, what felt like home. My name is A.J. Lawson, GTA Prep, Brampton, Ontario. I'd like to thank all the coaches that recruited me. I truly appreciate it. And it was a tough decision, but I'd like to announce my decision to University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. Since the moment I stepped foot on campus, it felt like home. Me and my family were happy. We felt like it was a great opportunity there. Frank Martin, he's a great guy. He told me he can help me out, teach me new principles on defense, and he can expand my game on the court. I felt like it was the best decision for me. Me and my family were comfortable, and it's just where I want to be. I feel with South Carolina, me and my teammates, we can go far into the tournament, and we can show our fans love and go far and put up for our city. I was blessed.
That was from AJ Lawson. As you can tell, it's on Instagram, so it automatically loops. But it's a good thing. And you know, you put him in there with Trey Campbell and TJ Moss, Kuznard, Keyshawn Bryant, Alonzo Frank. You know, the one thing that, and again, I hate to belabor this point just because it is the news of the day, but the one thing that South Carolina had last year is they had guys who were just bodies. I don't know if you have that now. You got guys who are going to play roles, and you have guys. I'm not saying that Frank Martin's going to go 13 deep with a rotation, but he has options now, which I don't think he had last year. He had a lot of times where he had to like point at whether it was Ibi Doumbia or who's the other guy's name I'm thinking of that I can't remember whose name is that transferred away.
Beatty? Beatty?
Not David. Kadeem Gee. You look down at Kadeem Gee and those guys, and you think, I can't play these guys. Mm-hmm. Now, there might be guys here that could qualify as projects, but a project is better than a body you can't use.
Well, in college basketball, let's face it, especially in postseason, it's a guard's game. And you got to have some options at guard, especially if you play the tough defense that South Carolina plays, because a lot of his guards are going to find themselves saddled with 2 and 3 fouls, maybe early in the second half, or maybe in some cases the first half. So you got to have some options. And I mean options as far as length is concerned, which they did not have last year, and that hurt them defensively down the stretch in a lot of games. By the way, the Beavers have broken through. We are playing baseball.
We are playing baseball in Omaha. Oregon State leads 1-0 over Arkansas. The Hogs have made Luke Heimlich work, even though he has retired 6 of the first 7 batters to face him. He has thrown 36 pitches through his opening 2 innings. Again, game 1 of this best 2 out of 3 College World Series final was delayed yesterday or postponed yesterday by a rain. Blaine Knight and Luke Heimlich, the 2 starting pitchers. Oregon State currently has 2 on with 2 out. They play in the second 1-0 Beavers.
Can you imagine if you are a media guy from Oregon State or from Arkansas, you have been in Omaha probably since Thursday a week ago, maybe Friday, since the press conference was on a Friday.
At least since the 14th or 15th.
And this thing now, what's today, Tuesday?
It's the 12th day.
It could run till Thursday. Crazy. If they go to a third game.
Well, We'd be gone for 2 weeks.
Well, actually, as I said before, they say normally during the College World Series, you add up the minutes of all the delays, and it usually averages at 129 to 149 minutes. Before the postponement last night, they had already had 660 minutes of delays.
Now, is this format good for the College World Series? Is it a good format to determine a champion? I know it's a good format for ESPN because during a very slow time of the year when there's not a heck of a lot going on, they've got 2 weeks of programming at night and the afternoon that they can do. And we know a lot of this planning of extending this thing out to over 2 weeks and then going to the best of 3 championship series was television was a major part of that. But
there's a similar decision made by ESPN. They're televising every Wimbledon match that is being played overseas on every one of their television outlets. And so very similarly, again, it's about filling programming, like you said, in a very lean part of the year.
So my question is, I mean, do you, because you can get to the championship round with 3 wins and your staff is so rested, do you really, like the SEC tournament, which is when you get through the first day of elimination, then you get to the main draw. It's double elimination, 8 teams, just like the College World Series. Now they're playing 4 games a day.
Yeah,
they're compressing it from a Wednesday through a Sunday. And people complain about too much baseball, about the games getting behind because of the weather and one on top of the other, and you're playing games to 2 and 3 in the morning. We don't want to see that. But my question is this thing stretched out too long? Are people – I know you got your diehard baseball fans who are dialed in every night and all that, but for the general public who might want to catch up with the College Baseball World Series and follow along, I mean, do you lose track of it over a 2-week plus period?
I don't think you lose track, but one thing I think you do need to preserve is the ability, at the end of the year to account for attrition, because like you said, the gauntlet that you go through in the regional and super regional weekends with your pitching, that's the ultimate test because of how compressed the schedule is there.
Well, Oregon State's got their ace starting for a third time. You would never get that in an SEC or ACC tournament.
I think that's good for the sport, though.
But he hadn't pitched 5 innings yet, I don't think.
But again, if he didn't have all this time in between to rest, you know, he wouldn't get this many opportunities.
The only thing that scares me about of messing with this thing is it seems like every year the popularity of this event is growing.
Well, their ratings are up.
They're up. Yeah. They are very
so
much
up. I don't want to touch it while things
and
are
Ray
growing.
Tanner would tell you that it's great, and any baseball guy would tell you that it's great. I'm just saying, you know, my goodness, these things. I think about those of us in the media when we do have the opportunity to go. I mean, it's over $2,000 in expenses to cover the. And this was $2012. Now we're 6 years later, so it's probably even more than that.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's a complaint more.
And the media hotel's an absolute pigsty.
It's more of a problem for those who are covering it. I think as a spectator sport.
But the laundromat down the street is very safe.
Just don't lock your computer in there after hours.
Well, I said it's very safe. If you need to hide from somebody, that's the place to be.
Gentlemen, I'll say hi to the sun for you because we're not getting any right now in the Midlands.
Oh, I'm sending you a bunch of rain and clouds.
You're not. You bite your tongue.
It's following you, man. I think the clouds and the lightning going to follow you.
Bite your tongue. The two elder statesmen will take you through the rest of the week. I'll talk to you next week on Monday on the week of the 4th. Until then, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll have Ryan Alinsky tomorrow and AJ Lawson on our program.
We'll be working towards that. We do know that we will have some more Mark Kingston for you because he's meeting with the media tomorrow.
He will talk about the solutions that will take place for Gamecock baseball. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Sports Talk.